Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Commoners with me and Jack.
Hello, everybody.
Jack, what are we drinking today?
Today we are drinking a coffee blend called Fey Step. This comes from my pantry, but prior to that, it comes from foundfamiliar.com. It is a medium roast with flavor notes of honey, almond, and apple.
We're on a streak with them. Right now.
Yeah, this is the last of the three blends that I have from them.
Right.
But this
Disclaimer, not sponsored, just from our pantries.
yes, just from our pantries.
Hashtag just from our pantries.
There we go.
Spread it on Twitter or wherever you use hashtags. I don't know.
Oh, goodness. Well, go ahead, take a sip. I've had this plenty of times, but I want to know what you think.
Yeah. I think we let it sit for a little while, so it might be cold by now. But, bottoms up.
Well,
I don't think I washed my mug. So I got a little bit of the last coffee still in there.
but what do you think?
It doesn't taste like fairies.
Doesn't taste like fairies?
Doesn't, no. Why would you make a coffee called Fey Step and not make it fairy flavor? Why would you not blend up fairies? Put fairies in a blender.
Listen, man, that's just sprinkles, okay? And I don't think sprinkles should necessarily go in coffee. This is not Starbucks with its oversugared, stuff. But this coffee blend on the bag does have some very beautiful art of a fey creature of sorts. I believe this is some flavor of Eladrin, as it is called Auto, in parentheses, Summer. This art piece is by Jessica Nguyen. She can be found on Instagram at Jess Ketchin or Jess Sketchin. Jess Sketchin. Like Just Sketchin or Jess Sketching.
Okay.
Yeah. Or also on Twitter at Jess Sketchin. So.
All right.
There you go. Beautiful art.
You said it had honey and almond flavor. Apple?
Honey, almond, and apple flavor notes. Yes, sir. I do get a little bit of that.
I got the apple.
Yeah.
Got the apple. Yeah, it just tastes like apple. It's apple coffee.
Yeah, it's. I get the honey and the apple. I do not get the almond so much. In our last week's blend of Thieves' Cant, that had a very subtle note of toasted almond. I think it's because it's toasted. This is just almond, so I think there is that difference. But I think it's decent.
What is it about toasting things that brings out the nuttiness?
It's literally just the toasting process.
Okay.
I don't know what it does chemically. I'm not a science man.
I guess it
Sorry.
caramelizes the natural sugars and nuts. I don't know. I don't know.
That sounds more reasonable than the process that I could possibly come up with.
I'm not a chemist.
Huh?
I don't know what things are made of and how
I promise this is not spiked coffee, okay? This is just how we normally are.
Yeah, I'm just stupid.
I mean, hey, buddy, same.
Yeah. We're the most unintelligent people on the planet, and we're here to talk to you about D&D.
Yes, we are.
So now that we're done with talking about coffee, I'm going to swig the last of this.
Down it!
Now that we talked about that, it's time for Monster of the Day. Jack, what monster are we talking about?
Today's monster of the day, I did give you a hint last week. I said you wouldn't see it coming. That's because today's monster comes to you from the Monster Manual on page 192. It is the Invisible Stalker.
Ba-ba-ba.
This creature is a medium neutral elemental.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an air elemental summoned from its native plane and transformed by powerful magic for the sole purpose to hunt down creatures and retrieve objects for its summoner. So, nice little bit of flavor text in there for you. But this is a very fun creature.
Imagine being like an invisible stalker and you get summoned to do a job and they're just like, I need you to kill somebody. And you as an invisible stalker is like, you never called to just hang out.
Some domestic invisible stalker, storylines going in there, I guess. I mean, stalkers...
Stalkers have feelings too. Don't take that out of context.
Oh, goodness.
We're talking about D&D monster.
Quick, distract him. The Invisible Stalker has an armor class of 14. It has 104 hit points with hit die of 16 d8 plus 32. It does have a speed of 50 feet and a hovering fly speed of 50 feet. So quite speedy in comparison to your average human there. In terms of its ability scores, it has a strength of 16, a dexterity of 19, that's the big boy score there,
Ooh.
a constitution of 14, intelligence of 10, so average, a wisdom of 15, and a charisma of 11. So mostly this is a nimble creature here.
Yeah. That dexterity being 19 it bothers me just because I don't like... It's one away from being the big number, which would be a +5 instead of a +4.
True,
but, you
true.
know. So, yeah. But,
You
know,
like nice round numbers.
I like round numbers.
Yeah.
19 doesn't do it for me.
That's fair. That's fair. Going into some of the Invisible Stalker's abilities here, it has skill proficiency in perception with a +8, and stealth, of course, with a +10.
Mm-hmm.
It has damage resistances as well. It is resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks. And it is immune to poison damage, which makes sense, as it is literally just made of air.
You can't poison air.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make poison. You can release a poisonous gas into the air, and that is technically poisonous air. But you can't poison a being made of air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just becomes part of it.
Yeah. Imagine an invisible stalker made of like a poisonous gas or something like that.
Beans, oh beans, the magical fruit.
I cast animate fart.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's for the 6-year-olds D&D campaign.
It's also for my D&D campaign.
Oh, God, please save me.
Sidebar, do ridiculous things with spells in D&D. I once used command to make a guy shit his pants, so...
Yes, you've heard it here first. Command shit coming to you live.
Yeah. I told a dude to shit, and he did.
Yeah.
And he had curry that day.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if you're at a state fair and that's an accident waiting to happen.
You know what I can't command to shit, though, is the Invisible Stalker.
You really can't. You want to know why?
Why?
Because it does not require air, food, drink, or sleep.
So there's nothing to create bodily gas.
Exactly.
It is bodily gas. It is a body of gas.
Yes, that is technically what air is.
Yeah.
You are correct in the very literal sense.
Yeah.
Going on to what else this creature has in store for it, it does have some condition immunities. It cannot be affected by exhaustion, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, restrained, or unconscious.
Again, the stream of pee conditions.
The stream of pee.
The stream of
pee conditions. I see what you're going with.
This is the episode for literal 10-year-olds.
Enjoy.
Sorry, guys.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
The Invisible Stalker does have dark vision out for 60... Excuse me. The Invisible Stalker has dark vision out for 60 feet, and it has a passive perception of 18, so that's pretty decent. I mean, obviously, your rogues have a very high probability of being able to sneak past this if they are skilled enough.
Yeah.
But an 18 is going to see
This creature
quite a
is
lot.
supposed to be like, what, an assassin, a hunter sort
Yes,
of thing. So it's like, not only does it have to be stealthy, but it also needs, like, visual contact.
It must, yes, it is very keen-sighted. The Invisible Stalker can understand common, but it cannot speak it. Mm-hmm. But it does know and speak Oron, though, which is the sort of air-aligned variant of primordial, I believe. Is
it just like various... Do you think it's like various wishes and whooshes? Like...
Something like that, yeah.
It's probably how air elementals speak. It's
like whistling or something
Yeah.
like that, you know? I mean, it's all just wind.
the language of air. It'd be like,
hot air.
Imagine if all elementals had that too. It's like, air elementals had like, it's just whooshing sounds, and then like crackling fire sounds is the language of the plane of fire.
Yeah.
And like smashing rocks is like the language of earth elementals.
Yeah. And water, it just
Slish slosh.
that's what good pussy sounds like.
God damn.
Well, maybe not exactly that.
Okay.
But, yeah. The Invisible Stalker does have a challenge rating of 6, so it's not rated to be incredibly dangerous or difficult to defeat. I will say, I think it deserves a higher challenge rating given my experience with these, as I have used them to slay many an NPC and PC.
All right.
The Invisible Stalker, as the name might suggest, is invisible.
I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah, so that is part of its invisibility trait. It also has the Faultless Tracker trait. The Stalker is given a quarry by its summoner. The Stalker knows the direction and distance to its quarry, as long as the two of them are on the same plane of existence. The Stalker also knows the location of its summoner. So again, this is a creature that is summoned for a singular task or purpose to hunt down and find someone or something.
But does it use Google or Apple Maps to
You know,
track
given the accuracy of which these things find their target, I'm going to have to say Google Maps. I do not need Apple Maps directing me off of a freeway overpass in the middle of the overpass, as it has done several times.
We'll unpack that later.
Yeah.
All right.
The Invisible Stalker does have a few actions. It has multi-attack, for which it can make 2 slam attacks. The slam attack itself has a +6 to hit, a range of 5 feet, against a single target.
Imagine getting slapped by wind.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen that, like, tortilla slap challenge? I imagine it's like that, kind of. The slam attack does 2d6 plus 3 bludgeoning damage. So, if you get slammed by wind, that's how much that's going to deal damage to you.
That's what getting slapped by wind feels like.
Yeah, a nice old sock to the face or a sock to the gut. But yeah, that's pretty much the entirety of the Invisible Stalker's stat block. Not too much going in here, but there are a few extra little tidbits in the sidebar here. Under its Directed Hunter trait here, well, not trait, but little description, says that when the Invisible Stalker is created or summoned into this plane, it stays at its summoner's side until it is given a task to perform. If an assignment doesn't involve hunting down and slaying a specific creature or recovering an object, the magic that created the Stalker ends and the elemental is released. Otherwise, it completes its tasks, returns to its summoner for more commands, forced to serve until the magic that binds it expires. And then if the summoner dies in the interim, the Stalker vanishes after completing its task.
Stalker works hourly.
Yeah. I mean, this next line sums it up best. An Invisible Stalker is an unwilling servant. It's
so
just,
am I.
Yeah, it's just there. I mean, hey, if it's doing its 9 to 5, it's there. It's there for the paycheck, and that's it. Minimum wage, minimum effort.
The amount of times people at my work have said, like, I don't care, I get paid by the hour, is just kind of funny. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Another trait for the Invisible Stalker is Unseen Threat. Invisible Stalkers are composed of air and are naturally invisible. A creature might hear and feel a Stalker in passing, but the elemental remains invisible even when it attacks. A spell that allows someone to see the invisible reveals only the Stalker's vague outline. This gives it such use. I love this creature. Tell me your thoughts about it, Austin. Do you like this?
I've never used Invisible Stalkers before. First time, mark it the first time, I have not used a particular monster.
Ooh, okay.
I haven't used Invisible Stalkers before.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really encountered them, I don't think. But it seems like, I think this is something that you'd like throw at your party, like a revenant.
Mm-hmm.
Or something, like something that is like out to get them or something.
Mm-hmm.
Just something to mess with them, I guess. It doesn't really feel like, a grunt monster or anything like that. It doesn't feel like something you'd throw in like a regular combat scenario.
Yeah, it's not something you use willy-nilly. This you have to have a very specific purpose for. Like if you're trying to nudge the party in a specific way, I feel like. Definitely a tool for a mage villain.
Yeah.
Somebody that has the wherewithal to summon one into existence.
And also, like, you get the you encounter this thing, and then then you discover like somebody's after you or something like that. Somebody's sicked an invisible stalker on you.
Great for ambushes, as they are invisible. But do you like the stat block? Do you like the creature as it is described?
Yeah, I wouldn't really change anything about it. I think it's just like, I feel like it's more like a monster to use, like you said, to nudge in a particular direction, not necessarily for like your basic like epic combat scenario.
I agree. That is, I have used these before.
Okay.
To great effect.
Okay.
I use these definitely as a sort of nudge to the party, and also as a smart villain using any and all means to accomplish his goals. You may recall I used these in Force to go after the party in the campaign in which you play in, to retrieve an item that you had recovered.
Oh, okay, so we have encountered these. I just didn't know they were invisible stalkers. I thought it was just some weird ghosty force.
No, this was... Invisible Stalkers are what attacked you at the big dinner. At the Queen's Castle.
We went to a big dinner party, and most of us got fucked up because we got ambushed by ghosts.
Yeah, and the fun thing was that not everybody could see invisible things, so it was trying to find a way to actually hit these consistently. And that's really the fun thing about these, is that as they are invisible, and even if you have ways of seeing them, you can only see an outline. It makes it very, very difficult to combat these unless you have something like dancing lights or fairy lights or something like that. Fairy fire, there we go.
Yeah. Mark your target.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, part of it being the hunter, that you can, like, it has a specific goal, like you said, a revenant. You know, it has this thing that it's going after to either kill or retrieve, or both. Mm-hmm. It's definitely something that you can, send from across the land to go and poke and nudge at the party repeatedly. Mm-hmm. So I like it for that reason. It's a very useful tool in a mage's arsenal that I haven't seen a lot of use of in other things, in other games, and I really think they're fun. I like them.
They look cool too. The art's pretty cool.
Yeah, the art is neat. It's a very brutal kill.
Which is weird because, you say, like, you were talking about an invisible creature, and then we're like, oh, it looks cool. It's like, how do you know what it looks like?
Yeah. I mean, in the art that displays it, it's a very, like, gruesome battle of it just decapitating a knight, it looks like.
Yeah. Slashing her to bits or something.
Yeah. Would you want to make any changes to the stat block or anything of that sort?
Nah, not really. Yeah. I think they're tough enough as is.
Yeah, I agree.
It's tough enough to deal with, like, invisible creatures. Mm-hmm. Like, really the only scenario where, like, a player has any advantage over it is if, like, A, they can see invisibility by casting a spell, or they have, like, blind sight or true sight. But at that point, it's also, like, when it's close enough for your blind sight to detect, it's too late.
I was gonna say, the thing with this being that it is that it can hover as well. If you have, like, somebody is like basing it off of ground sensations with the feet, that makes it a little more difficult to detect.
Tremor sense one.
Tremor sense, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, but yeah, I like the stat block. I wouldn't want to make any changes to it. I definitely think it's worth having its challenge rating bumped up, perhaps just a smidge. Mm-hmm. But apart from that, yeah. Now that
we've talked about that, it's time for the next section of the show. Jack, you know what that is?
Oh, is this topic of the day?
No.
Oh.
Yes, it's topic of the day.
Oh my God, it's topic of the day.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna roll. We're gonna roll for a new topic. So
alrighty.
Let's see what we get. Hopefully, it's not a repeat, because if it's a repeat, we have to re-roll. 77?
77. Ooh, okay.
77 or 78.
77 is action economy.
The economy is in shambles.
Yes.
All right. Action economy and our opinions about it. Action economy in 5th edition is weird. Again, we have only the basis of 5e under to go off of. That's our route for our D&D knowledge.
Yeah,
but
I've played a little bit of other things, but nothing immense. Yeah. And if you asked me to recite any of the rules, I couldn't. So yeah, 5th edition.
I'm going to start by saying this. Player action economy is a little busted. A little. Monster action economy is lacking.
Agreed.
Because, the thing is most monster stat blocks are designed around the idea that they're going to be hitting pretty hard in order to contend with like a large group or something like that. So they don't always need like too many maneuvers or anything. But like, a monster, if it's lucky, gets multi-attack.
Yeah.
Granted, there are a lot of monsters at higher CRs that, get like 3 or maybe even 4 attacks in a multi-attack. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they have options for that. I think that's where they tried to balance it out, honestly, is like monster action economy is lacking, but we're going to give you options of how they decide to use their action.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's like they got their movement, their main action, which could be a multi-attack, could be casting a spell, could be something else entirely, and then just no bonus action. Oftentimes, monsters don't even get to use a reaction either.
Yeah, which is a shame.
Player economy.
Oh, yes.
Pretty busted, especially with the right combination. Multi-classing is...
you and your multi-classing. Oh, here we go.
It is both a blessing and a curse, because when you're a player, you want to get the most out of your turn as possible. When you're a DM and the player unloads like as much as possible off of all of their features in a single turn.
Samurai fighters, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, samurai fighters are busted.
Yeah.
Because you can get some pretty cool combinations of things.
Yeah.
Depending on the classes you take. Obviously, fighter has like one of the biggest action economies out of everything. If you go like a full 20 levels in fighter, you get, your 4 main attacks. Mm-hmm. You get your action surge, which can be another 4 attacks or another action. And then you obviously have your bonus action if you have the ability to use it in some way. Like if you have the ability to cast a spell, or if you have
Great
Weapon or something like that. Or
Polearm Master, I think, is the other one.
I don't remember. I'm going to have to look that up.
Or if you have like an offhand,
Yeah.
Offhand attack.
But yeah. And then there's other classes as well that have some good action economy options. Like Rogue. They have their cunning action, which is just, the ability to dash as a bonus action is just a little too good. And that's what I mostly use a cunning action for when I play a rogue.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Not to disengage?
Rarely.
Okay.
Because usually I'm the one chasing and they're the one running away.
It's a very aggressive rogue you play.
Yeah.
Action economy, I feel like there's a fine line that has to be walked, so that way it's not drastically tipping the scales in one party's favor or the other.
Yeah.
Whether that be for, hostile creatures or for the player party, what have you. I feel like oftentimes there's just so many things that could synergize well, but they take up the same action or bonus action slot that
Correct.
you would want to do, which is a damn shame.
That's honestly, I think I've expressed this to you before, but that's honestly why I think Berserker Barbarian is like one of the worst barbarian subclasses, is because the extra attack it gives you takes up your bonus action.
Yeah.
So when you rage at first, which you don't get that extra attack until after you rage. So when you rage on your first turn, you don't get the extra attack. You have to wait until your next turn.
Yeah.
So I've always thought like that's like doesn't really synergize very well.
Yeah.
And that's just within one class, you know.
I know. Yeah.
And then there's other things too that, you know, they take up a bonus action or an action to do, and in the midst of combat, you know, it's like, well, if I do this, I miss out on this, or I have to wait a turn to do this.
Yeah.
And obviously, you don't want. I feel like that's another fine line too, where it's like, you know, you don't want your players to have like super busted economy like that, because you don't want
to make them too powerful.
You don't want to make them too powerful, like or something like that. And it's a fine line when you're a player, because I know there's like certain things that I enjoy doing as a player in terms of this, like how I use my turn.
Yeah.
Because like honestly, like the sorcerer ability to quick cast stuff is just is pretty good.
It's a godsend.
Or to twin cast as well.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you turn that one target attack into 2 targets, and then, you know, you can cast another spell as a bonus action if you wanted.
A non-level spell. You can cast a cantrip.
A cantrip, or well, it depends on the order in which you do it, because you could do like cantrip as your action main spell as a bonus action, or you can do it the other way. Doesn't really matter. I know people have like weird gripes about this, but I've always thought of it, it's just like one spell, one cantrip.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which one takes up your bonus action. It's just that they both can't be.
They cannot both be leveled spells.
They both can't be leveled spells.
Yeah.
Like that's the simplest way I can put it. Because any other way I've heard it described just ends up being confusing, and it's just like. It's like only the spell can be the bonus action.
Yeah,
or something like that. So
I mean, there's other like features and abilities for different races or classes that like, just don't make sense. Or I mean, some of them have been changed in more recent updates. Like Azamar had their their big transformation that they get once they hit 3rd level. Used to be an action, but I believe now it's a bonus action, which is something that I had always sort of homebrewed as it being a bonus action, because it just made no sense to have that be an entire action.
Yeah.
And if you look at like the War Priest and its the War Priest feature of War Domain Cleric.
Yeah.
And how, yes, you can use your bonus action to make an extra weapon attack a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. And I'm like, well, that's just awful.
Yeah. I mean,
there's better things you can use for your bonus action than that.
Yeah, there's other classes that have some good synergies and some bad synergies. Because like Eldritch Knight, for example, because I've toyed around with this one before a little bit. I haven't played one yet, but I've toyed around with it. It's like, you know, you use your action. You have the 7th level ability called War Magic, where you use your action to cast a cantrip, and if you do that, you can make one weapon attack as a bonus action, not just melee. And then at 18th level, there's another version of that where you can use your action. If you use your action to cast a spell, you can do the weapon attack as a bonus action. So, you know, difference between cantrip and spell. But it's like, that's cool. You're wasting your main action by casting the spell. And I'm not saying that, like, sure, there's probably other. This is probably a balancing issue they found at Wizards. Is like, well, what if they use their cantrip action or their spell action to cast something truly devastating, like an Eldritch Knight casts Fireball and then unloads with 4 attacks. Like that's probably a little. That's probably something they found that was like maybe a little too broken, or something like that. But like. From the other version of this, you know, that War Magic feature, and then the weapon attack is the bonus action, just feels like, from a player perspective, probably a waste of a turn.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, I can go up and whack this guy with my hammer or sword or whatever I'm using, like 4 times. Why would I, you know, cast a spell, then hit only once.
I've always
But then, like, they also have action surge, I guess, which is also...
That is true. I was going to say something that I've always thought would be an interesting way to make a play on Eldritch Knight is you have the option to replace one of your... If you take the attack action, you can replace one of your attacks with a spell.
A spell or cantrip or something like that.
I'd say, you can do a spell if one of your attacks, then you can keep the...
I think there's new features that work similar to that, where it's like you replace one of your attacks in the attack action with another thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if those are, like, canon or homebrew things. I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I like the whole thing about, if you take the weapon attack, you can bonus action cantrip, just fire one off.
Yeah.
I feel like if you kept that, but you added in the... you could replace one of your attacks with just a spell. Yeah. I feel like that would be...
I feel like Eldritch Knight, in particular... this is going to be a talk about Eldritch Knight now. Eldritch Knight, in particular, feels like the class where... It feels like the class where, like, you take that to be a magical fighter, and then you take only, like, the few levels in Sorcerer just to get, like, the... Or you don't even do that. You take the Meta Magic Adept feat.
Mm-hmm.
Get a few sorcery points, and then, use it to quick cast something. Take up your bonus action that way. But,
Yeah.
I will say one of the most busted things I can ever think of in terms of action economy is honestly Rogue Fighter. Just because, Fighter just has... The thing is that Fighter is so lackluster. People say Fighter is a bad class. This is now turned into my thesis in the defense of the Fighter.
I love Fighter.
I love Fighter. But a lot of people think that Fighter is a bad class or that it's too vanilla because they just don't get a lot of cool stuff. And I think that that's the wrong take to have.
It's very short-sighted.
Because, if you think about it, the Fighter gets more ability score improvement levels than any other class. They get 7 total as opposed to 5.
Take a feat.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you don't have to take ability score improvements. You can use feats. And that's if your DM allows feats, but I have never encountered a group that doesn't allow feats. If you don't allow feats in your game, tell us in the comments. Tell us why.
Yeah, how are you going to walk anywhere without him?
It's a bad joke.
Come on, we hadn't made one yet.
Okay. All right, cool. What are you talking about? We made plenty of jokes. We made plenty of jokes.
No, I mean a feet joke.
Okay. All right, fine. We're joking about feet now.
Toes.
Yeah, but Fighter has all those ability score improvements and stuff like that. So it has feats and all that. And that's mostly what's supposed to set it apart from all the other classes is not only because it's so lackluster in terms of magic, it needs to have stuff to make up for it. So that's why it's Mr. I swing my sword a million times in one turn. That's why it's also I have this feature stacked on this feature. I have my strength and dexterity maxed out, so I'm and constitution maxed out, so I can just be a tank or something like that.
Yeah.
And also just... And the thing is, if people are saying that it sucks just because they feel like it doesn't have as much role play opportunity and it's boring in that sense, I say you're not being imaginative enough. Because don't blame the class. If you can't come up with a compelling character and then blame it on the class, then you just suck at making characters.
If you're nothing without the suit, you don't deserve it.
Yeah, it's sort of... Because the easiest cop-outs for... This is diving into another topic entirely.
I'll circle us back around to action economy. I'm waiting.
I want to finish this point because the easiest role play classes with a built-in role play mechanic are always going to be sorcerer, warlock, paladin, cleric, because they're all tied to another entity outside of your own character. Cleric has their god, same thing with a paladin. Warlock has their patron, and sorcerer usually has whatever the source of their power is. Whether that's a person or a place is or something else is up for,
I mean, a paladin doesn't necessarily need a god, but continue.
Yeah. I think most people play paladins like they're connected to gods, but yes,
You could do, like,
paladin
with the crown,
technically,
that's a king.
Yeah, paladin
Or queen.
technically draws their magic from just the pure idealism
Yeah.
of whatever. But I think most people play them like holy knights,
Yeah.
connected to a god or something like that. But it could be either way. Anyway, but fighters don't have that, so therefore people usually think they're boring, and because they don't innately have spells unless it's Eldritch Knight, that's why they think they're boring. And and fighter is a good class. Fighter is a good class. It has busted action economy, especially with 2 action surges at later levels.
Mm-hmm.
If you throw on a rogue level, your bonus action gets better just because you have the ability to chase down your opponents or disengage or do other things. And all that.
Let me circle us back around to the more base discussion here.
Yeah. I flew off the rails because I'm a zealot about defending fighter as a class, but
we need somebody to defend fighter. We need somebody to defend ranger. I guess it's the 2 classes that frequently get shit on, unfortunately, because they're both great. But circling back around to the main point of action economy, let me throw something out at you that I've had some thoughts or I've thought about several times. If you have something that takes a bonus action to do. But there's 2 things you want to do with a bonus action. Could you instead, or how would you deal with this? With somebody that wants to use their action to do a bonus action. Like if a rogue wanted to bonus action, her, what's something that's not, you can't normally do in an action for a rogue.
Well, the cunning action is dash, disengage, or hide.
Yeah.
So,
here,
but they get a little flexibility there because usually those actions are just mainline actions.
Yeah.
But the rogue gets the flexibility of you can do it as a bonus action. It's not it now becomes a bonus action for you. It says you may.
let me go ahead.
So you don't have to. So you could move, dash again.
Yeah.
You could do that with your rogue.
Let's say that if I was...
Like, are you talking about, like, a scenario where, like, you have a feature that is a bonus action, but then you also have, like, a spell that is a bonus action? It's like 2 things that are a bonus action.
For example, if I am an Aasimar cleric, could I, if I have my transformation at level 3 to do my, radiant form or my necrotic shroud or whatever... And if I also wanted to do Shield of Faith, those are both bonus actions. But if I gave up an action to do the other one, I mean, if you look at it like a bonus action is something quick or extra, but that you're spending the time to do.
Yeah.
That's where I sort of think, is there some leeway there to sort of...
some flexibility? I think that's also like... I don't know. I think at that point, it's like it's in the domain of like rule of cool. And if you as a DM want to do that, like I think there's technically a rule for doing that, but it's not in D&D. It's in like Pathfinder rules or something like that, where it's like a little more flexible. But I'm not an expert on Pathfinder.
I know nothing about it.
I know nothing about Pathfinder. If you know about Pathfinder, let us know in the comments. But we're not going to... We're not going to become experts overnight about it, unfortunately.
Because I feel like there's... I mean, trying to come up with things off the fly. I should have probably written these down, but I didn't know what our topic was going to be for the day.
Yeah.
I think that, if you have something that's a bonus action, and it's not like you're trying to do 2 spells as a bonus action or something like that. If you have, like, I want to do this feature and I want to do this spell, or if I want to do this feature and I want to use this item, or whatever the case may be. If they're both a bonus action, and you want to do them both, if you give up your action to do a bonus action, I feel like that's, a worthy trade-off, I feel, Because typically with an action, you can do a lot more with an action than a bonus action. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm not seeing something, or maybe there's some ridiculous broken combination.
There's probably some balance issue there, but I do think that most bonus action spells are usually not as powerful as mainline action spells.
Yeah.
And the same thing with features too. I mean, there's obviously some heavy hitter bonus actions. Like, obviously, going into a rage is like a good bonus action.
Yeah.
If you're a Hexblade Warlock, you get the curse that you can use as a bonus action, and that's pretty effective. But in most of those scenarios, you're using your action to, activate something that's going to benefit you, and then you're going to use your action to attack.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to think of it because, like, your point of like Shield of Faith in particular is pretty solid. Of like, okay, here's this thing that like I may have as a racial trait or like a class trait that is a bonus action. Here's this other thing that I want to do, like a spell that takes up a bonus action. That isn't like necessarily game breaking. Like all Shield of Faith is just like you give a +2 to AC to something.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like Healing Word as a bonus action. So if you popped your Radiant form and then did a Healing Word, is that too much to ask, or is that like, is that like, something that is? Let's ask the audience.
I don't know. Well, I'm kind of the opinion on this that like. This is like a little situational, and most of the time when you're in a situation where you want to do those two things, it's because you're starved for options.
Yeah.
Because there are definitely those combat scenarios where you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing right now.
Yeah,
but
I've been there. Trying to decide which meta magic to use on a quicken spell, you're just like,
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Let us know what you guys would do in that scenario if you're a DM.
Yeah, would you, or for players, would you want to be? Is that something that you're interested in? Is that something that you've tried to do but have been told no? Is that something that you would allow your players to do?
I think it's just honestly case by case basis, and whether or not because rules only take you so far.
Yeah,
and you have to, and then sometimes you have to like rule of cool it.
They're more guidelines than actual rules,
There
I mean, it's been
a while since we've seen Barbosa.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing him back.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
I mean, it says in the books, the DM is the ultimate,
The DM adjudicates the rules.
Yeah.
That's another reminder for all of you guys out there that complain about rules, like we're complaining about rules right now. Is just like D&D offers you the most basic rule set. Take it all with a grain of salt, because because ultimately, if something doesn't work, you have the power to change it, and that's what Wizards has said. They really only say that you should follow those rules that are in the book when it comes to the official Adventure League or something like that. That's that's usually the only time where the books are like the law of the land. I can see, but if it's your casual home game or something like that, just don't take it too seriously.
It's
the stuff is yours to play with.
Exactly. But it's all about building the adventure to you and your friends.
Yeah. But bonus action economy is a little wonky sometimes.
Yeah.
The more things you can do with your action, obviously, it's like the more busted you are. I mean, Fighter is obviously the most busted example of that. Nobody has that same kind of, action economy. They do make it a little fragile, just in the sense that, like, okay, if you go a full 20 levels in Fighter, you get 4 attack actions, or 4 extra attacks. But, that's for a full 20 levels. So you don't, if you multi-class, you immediately forfeit that. I'm trying to think if there's any other like class that has like bonkers action economy. I don't really think there is, because like Rogue has more stuff that they can do with their bonus action. Fighter has extra attacks out the wazoo.
Sorcerers can quick cast spells.
Which kind of makes them the busted one in terms of like spellcasters.
Well, I mean, you still got wizards with, unlimited lower level spells.
Yeah, wizards can definitely make a lot of use out of those first levels.
But yeah, those are like the big three.
Actually, we didn't talk about classes that are lacking in action economy.
Ah, yes.
And I'd say the first class that is lacking in action economy is Warlock.
Yeah.
Because they may get cool stuff to do with their bonus action from their features, like we talked about, the Hexblade's Curse, obviously, and and maybe some spells that are bonus actions. But the thing is Warlocks just are so limited on spell slots, and I know why they did that, to like kind of set it apart. And I mean, they come back on a short rest, but like the one thing that's always irked me about playing a Warlock is I cast like maybe 2 or 3 spells depending on what my level is, and then I'm reduced to Eldritch Blast.
Yeah.
Or if I'm lucky, I'm a Hexblade Warlock and I get a sword.
Yeah.
And I can attack with things. But, you know, that's another part of action economy too, is like how stale it gets after a few turns or something, because you might not have that many options. With spellcasters, you obviously have a lot of options because, I mean, you're limited to a number of options equal to how many spell slots you have.
Yeah.
But because
while you're in combat.
Anyways.
But it's a little different if you have like rituals, and things like that.
And I can see why then like melee classes become a little stale usually, because like, you know, that's probably why people are so against fighter. Sometimes it's just like you're just whacking things, and it's just like that's what you do with. It's just a different.
Yeah.
It's just a different flavor of hitting something.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever I play a fighter, I like to do the whole thing of like flavor my attacks in a certain way, to say like I do this particular move with my sword or hammer or whatever I'm using, so that way it gives some fluidity and life to the combat, rather than just saying I go up to him and stab him with my sword or my dagger or whatever.
I whack.
I whack. Yeah, I whack the bad guy.
Yeah. What am I gonna do? Whack.
Yeah. So there is that. And that's why, honestly, like, because then it's the same thing with like Barbarian or Paladin or Ranger. It's just like they have fewer actions than Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Rogue even has fewer than that. Rogue gets 1 attack unless they, you know, use an offhand weapon for 2-weapon fighting.
Yeah, and that takes their bonus action.
But you know, it's the same thing where they have probably just regular old attacks. I mean, the Barbarian gets the benefit of like maybe they can do some cool stuff while they rage. Paladin obviously gets Divine Smites and some bonus action spells that can do some good stuff, or sometimes they can use their action to cast a full spell.
Yeah,
they just have some magical option. Also, you know, Monk having unarmed strikes.
Oh,
they get to mix it up sometimes and just like use their key to do whatever.
Yeah, they do plateau a little bit, but that's a different conversation for another day.
Yeah. You know, like ultimately there are options there. There's options for spellcasters, obviously. But Warlock to me is the one that has like the most stale action economy after a while, because it's like I use up my 2 or 3 spells depending on what level I am.
Yeah.
And then I am left with cantrips, and then it's just like, well, good old Eldritch Blast, little hand cannon.
Yeah.
Pew, like.
And that kind of forces you to either put your invocations into making Eldritch Blast as good as you possibly can.
Yeah.
So you're not just sitting there, you know, going like, okay, here's a little flick of the wrist, take that.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you have all these other amazing options that you can do, but that sort of lowers down how viable Eldritch Blast gets. And they kind of do get dicked down a little bit in terms of the action economy out of all the classes. Everybody else has some really cool things you can do. and like with a lot of options. But like you said, Warlock does get a little stale.
It gets a little stale after a while. I mean, there's also the
longer the combat goes on. Yeah.
The longer the combat goes on, the fewer options they have at their disposal. There is also the special spells that they get like at higher levels, which is like, is like I choose like one 6th level spell, one 7th level spell that I can cast once per day or something like that. Or it might be per short rest, but I can't remember.
I'll look it up while you
But, that obviously gives them a little more options just because they get one free big boy spell per day. But ultimately, it's those few spells, and then back to old reliable.
Yeah, those come back on a long rest.
Oh, they come back on. Okay, yeah.
See, if they came back on a short rest, I feel like Warlocks would be more up to par.
Yeah,
because then it's like you could potentially have multiple 8th, 9th level spells in a day, but
again, this is probably one of those situations where like Wizards did a whole lot of balance testing for things like this, and then decided on this thing in particular, and we just didn't know about it because ultimately it's like Wizards knows best or whatever. They don't. As we said earlier, Wizards gives you a guideline, and if you don't like the guideline, change it.
Yeah.
They're not the end-all, be-all. They have been kind enough to give us a tool set to work with.
Yeah.
We love you, Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
We love your games.
So much.
I like 2 of your games. I like Magic the Gathering. Just going to put that out there right now. I haven't played Magic the Gathering in a long time. Actually, I've been on a couple months hiatus at this point.
Oh,
but
damn shame.
Who knows? I'll have to pick it back up at some point.
At some point, well, we're not, recording our little talks here that we like to share with all of you.
Yeah.
But yeah. Some people are lucky some classes are lucky, some classes are unlucky.
Yeah. Not always. There's options for players all the time. Obviously, there's some things where you can give people more action economy too. But, you can give your fellow the first one that comes to mind is like haste. The haste spell works pretty well.
Fun spell.
There is also Order Domain Cleric from Tasha's Guide, which it's an early on ability, but you can if you cast an enchantment spell on a target, you can give that target the option of taking a weapon attack as a reaction. I know I used that a couple times when I played one.
Yes, I do recall.
Order Domain Cleric is actually pretty solid, and I would love to go back and play that again.
Yes, Voice of Authority, first level Order Domain feature.
Yeah.
If you cast a spell with a spell slot of first level or higher and target an ally with the spell, that ally can use their reaction immediately after the spell to make one weapon attack against a creature of your choice that you can see.
Right.
If the spell targets more than one ally, you choose the ally who can make the attack.
Yeah, the best... I forgot that it was just any spell that targets an ally. Mm-hmm. I thought it was specifically enchantment school magic. But the easiest one to do that with was to cast Bless or Aid or something like that. Something that gives people more options, and then then it gives people a bonus to something, and then they automatically go ahead and go whoosh, attack with whatever.
Yeah,
I did that on our group Paladin.
Oh yes, it's particularly useful if they're just about to have their turn in initiative. That way they're not like giving up an opportunity.
And the fun thing is like the reason I did it on the paladin too was because she could smite.
Yes.
As I was like, there's no limitation to smite, which is a conversation for another day. But smite is so versatile. There's no limitation on it, honestly.
I mean, hey, this is an action economy.
Yeah, you have to spend a spell slot, but it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you a bonus action or an action. You just do it.
It's so
and
good.
You have the option to do it or not to do it.
Yeah,
and
it's like sneak attack, but they both have you can do sneak attack once in a turn.
Yeah,
but divine smite as much as you want, so long as you have these spell slots to burn for it.
And it's busted when you put it on a barbarian too, because if you do a barbarian paladin, you're reckless raging, and you usually can't concentrate on spells, but you can still expend your spell slots from paladin to smite on your raging reckless attacks. It's like busted.
Oh yes,
it's
love to
ridiculous.
See it. You love to see it.
This is just contributing to paladins are overpowered, nerf paladins, but
here's
at the same time,
here's a question for you. On the enemy side of things, for a creature like...
Oh, yeah, we talked about this before.
For a creature like a red dragon, if you have your claw, your tail, your wing, your bite, what have you, and you've also got your breath weapon, like...
I've always thought that breath weapon would your like the big attacks would just take up your whole action. Multi attacks that say you have to do your attacks in a particular order, I thought were always just stale and not very fluid. So I was always like, if it has a multi-attack feature, be flexible with which attacks you let it do.
Because one of the things, like, again, let me go ahead and pull open the monster manual here. Let me flip over to the dragons side of things. Taking a look here at the adult white dragon. Here we go. Multi-attack says it uses its frightful presence, then it makes 3 attacks, right? It doesn't say anything about the breath weapon, which makes me, sometimes question is that just like, you do it anyway? Do you spend that instead? Because the multi-attack doesn't mention it at all. It mentions frightful presence, doesn't mention the breath weapon. Because I know there's a whole question about, you get this back on a roll of a 5 or a 6.
I think of it as like you're casting Fireball.
Yeah.
Or something. You're casting a big area of an effect thing. So therefore it's going to take up your whole action to do it as a monster. So yeah. So I don't think it would be affected by or be included in the multi-attack thing.
Okay.
In terms of enemy economy, actually, because we touched on this at the start of this conversation, but we didn't fully get into it, was a lot of enemies don't get a lot of versatility in terms of action economy. They usually are kind of just attack or cast a spell or something like that.
They become hit dummies.
Yeah.
Oftentimes.
And they don't usually have a bonus action. And again, I'm sure Wizards was like, and most enemies are really formidable. We don't need to give them bonus action features to make them worse. But a lot of them don't have bonus actions. The only reactions that they really ever use are, attacking if something moves out of its range and doesn't disengage properly. And that's about it. I mean, the benefit is of higher levels, though, is you run legendary creatures, and those have, the legendary actions, at least,
yes,
that
sir.
you can do, and gives you a little more action economy as a DM with your monsters. And I don't have any complaints about that, but it's, it's like when you're running regular combat, I usually just don't want things to just be hit dummies.
Yeah.
Like you said. So, I usually try... And I know there's people that are probably going to be are not going to agree with this, but I usually try to give them more action options, or sometimes I'll give them bonus action things.
Yeah.
The easiest one to do was to give a lot of creatures cunning action.
Yeah.
So they could do the whole disengage or dash thing away, because doing that in the middle of combat can really screw up your players, especially when the creature that disengages has a bigger move speed than the player. So,
Yes.
you have them disengage and run away, and then the player has to either spend their whole turn moving there and then dashing to get up close and then not having an attack left, or
which is a little infuriating.
Which I guess is probably why.
Yeah.
But it makes combat a little more dynamic.
Yeah.
Giving an enemy an ability like that.
Mm-hmm. I guess that kind of gets into the discussion, and again, this is a topic for another time about, like combat balancing, but like, do you go ahead and give, a small number of things that all have like many, many things that they can do, or do you just use the stat blocks as written, which are usually very narrow in their capabilities, but you pepper the field with them?
Most of the time I do that, the latter.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, it's a grunt enemy. It doesn't need to have like a stellar stat block or anything like that. It just needs to be there to hinder the group.
Yeah.
And make things like a little more challenging.
I used to do huge swarms of enemies just because you guys in the party were able to just take things out by the swaths. And then I switched to having it be just a few harder to hit, but those just got wiped in moments.
We mowed the battlefield like grass.
Yeah. Now it's sort of a hybrid of, a couple commander units with a fair number of underlings.
Like I think like in big group scenario combats, it's either you give your opponent, your enemies, or sorry, not your enemy, your players, one big thing to hit, or you give them a couple small things, a couple big things, and then maybe one really big thing.
Yeah.
And that's, if you're into that sort of gameplay style.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. The other thing about action economy that we didn't discuss, and I know we're dragging this one out, but the other thing about action economy that we didn't discuss was actual rounds of combat.
Yeah.
Because that's another big thing about taking your turns and using your actions is how you interact with it throughout an entire round. It obviously depends on your party composition, how you use certain things, and it lets you strategize and whatever. But, there's also the idea that a lot of things in combat are happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
Which is always kind of like, it kind of bothered me a little bit, because it's just like, this 3 hours of combat you did in actuality was 30 seconds.
I mean, it's the pitfalls of a turn-based combat system.
I don't know. So in my head, I've always done it as like each turn is overlapping by 3 seconds, or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had another point about rounds of combat.
Do you want to say that for when we get to the combat topic? We do have it on our list.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, it is like there is a whole thing about balancing fights and combat.
Shows how much I know, guys.
It's one of the earlier ones that we came up with a while ago, but I feel like we're kind of delving into that type of discussion.
I think honestly, most of the points we made about action economy are good, but if you disagree with any of our points about action economy, please let us know that we're idiots.
Yes, well, let's have a discussion.
Please let us know that I'm an idiot and that Jack is unfortunately stuck with me.
We're both dumbasses in our own right. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So,
but let us know your thoughts. What are your thoughts on action economy? What changes would you want to see, if any? You may think that the system as it stands right now is perfectly fine and is good to run on. But let us know what you think. Comment below. Let us know. Yeah. Or, send us a message. Drop a link somewhere. I don't know, I'm just going off on
slide into our DMs.
Slide into the DMs. Yeah, there we go.
All right. Well, that's all I have to say about this.
Yeah, I think I got my couple of points. I know you did a lot of the talking. Thank you.
Listen, I need you do most of the talking most days when
I do a lot of the monsters
when we do the monster stat blocks and the descriptions and stuff, and so I have to pick up the slack. He's like, you talk about the coffee and the monsters, and then we get into the topic of the day, and then it's an opinionated thing, and then I have to be like, okay, here, listen. This is what I think about this.
All right, you peoples, listen up. Here's what we're gonna do.
So,
hopefully you enjoy our ramblings.
Yeah.
But I think that's all we got for this topic today.
Yeah. You know what? No preview for next week's monster.
None?
No. Let's not do
Keep
that.
them in suspense?
Yeah, let's let them stew.
Let them stew?
Yeah, you guys are stew now.
I don't know if that's a good thing to be or a... We're gonna
log off.
We're gonna keep you in the dark. We're gonna keep you under rocks, and we're just not gonna tell you what next week's monster is till it's next week.
Yeah.
I threw in a little bit of a hint there.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to us. This has been Coffee and Commoners. I'm Jack.
I'm Austin.
We'll see you next time.
See you when we see you.
Stay caffeinated.
Bye.